Let me tell you something most people learn too late, and some never accept at all. The idea that someone out there is your real friend, someone who will always stand by you, protect you, choose you no matter the cost. That idea is comforting, but it's also dangerous. Because expectations create blind spots, and blind spots get you hurt. Most people don't betray you because they're evil. They betray you because loyalty is expensive and comfort is cheap. When being loyal costs them nothing, they'll smile, agree, support, and stand beside you. The moment loyalty requires sacrifice, risk, or inconvenience, most people disappear, not dramatically, quietly, politely, with excuses that sound reasonable, and that's what makes it hurt. You grow up thinking friendship is about time, laughter, memories, shared secrets. You think loyalty is automatic if you've been there long enough. It's not. Loyalty isn't built on history. It's built on values, and values are rare. Here's the hard truth. People are loyal to what benefits them in the moment, their comfort, their image, their safety, their emotions. Not to you. When you understand this, you stop being surprised. You stop taking it personally. You stop bleeding over things that were never meant to hold weight in the first place. Look closely at how people behave when things get uncomfortable. When you set boundaries, when you say no, when you stop giving without receiving, when you're no longer useful, entertaining, or easy to deal with, that's when you learn who they really are, because pressure reveals character. Words don't. Most people don't want a friend. They want access. Access to your time, your energy, your resources, your emotional labor. They want the version of you that makes their life easier. And the moment you change, grow, or require something back, they label you difficult, selfish, or distant. That's not friendship. That's convenience. And here's where people get it wrong. They keep expecting loyalty from people who never promised it. They expect depth from shallow connections. They expect commitment from people who live moment to moment. Then they call it betrayal when the illusion collapses. Stop doing that. Stop expecting people to be something they've never shown you they are. Stop projecting your values onto people who don't share them. That doesn't make you loyal. It makes you vulnerable in the wrong places. Real loyalty is rare because it demands discipline. It demands self-control. It demands choosing what's right over what's easy. Most people are not built for that. They are emotional, reactive, and self-preserving, and that's not an insult, it's human nature. Once you accept this, something powerful happens. You stop chasing validation, you stop over-explaining, you stop trying to earn a place in someone's life. You become selective, calm, grounded. You observe instead of assume. You learn to keep your expectations low and your standards high. You let people show you who they are without forcing closeness. You enjoy connections for what they are, not what you hope they'll become. And when people leave, switch sides, or disappoint you, it doesn't break you, because you never handed them power over your emotional stability. This doesn't mean you become cold or bitter. It means you become clear. You give trust in layers, not all at once. You let consistency speak louder than words. You don't confuse familiarity with loyalty. The strongest people aren't surrounded by many friends. They're surrounded by clarity. They know that respect is more reliable than affection, that self-respect is stronger than attachment. That solitude is safer than fake loyalty. At the end of the day, the only person guaranteed to stay with you through every season is you. Build that relationship first. Be loyal to your principles, your boundaries, your growth. When you do that, you stop begging for loyalty, and the few who are capable of it will recognize you without being asked. Loyalty is rare because it demands sacrifice, and most people choose comfort over character. That truth is hard to swallow because it forces you to see people not as you wish they were, but as they actually are when something is at stake. Anyone can be loyal when loyalty is free. Anyone can stand beside you when it costs them nothing, when there is no risk, no loss, no inconvenience. The real test comes when being loyal means giving something up, and that's where most people quietly fail. Sacrifice is uncomfortable. It threatens stability, reputation, security, and emotional safety. And most people are not trained to value character over comfort. They are trained to avoid pain, avoid conflict, avoid loss. So when loyalty asks them to step into discomfort, they hesitate, they calculate. They weigh the cost, and more often than not, they walk away while convincing themselves they had no choice. People like to believe they are loyal. They tell themselves stories about being good friends, supportive partners, reliable allies. But loyalty is not an identity you claim, it's a behavior you demonstrate under pressure, and pressure exposes priorities. When someone has to choose between protecting you and protecting themselves, most will protect themselves and call it being realistic or doing what's best for me. Comfort doesn't look selfish on the surface. It disguises itself as practicality, self-care, balance, peace of mind. It sounds reasonable. It sounds mature. That's why it's so easy to justify abandoning principles when things get hard. People don't say I chose comfort over you. They say I couldn't get involved. I didn't want drama. I had my own problems. Comfort always has a good excuse. Character, on the other hand, is expensive. It requires standing firm when it would be easier to stay silent. It requires telling the truth when lying would protect you. It requires loyalty even when no one is watching, no one is applauding, and no one is rewarding you for it. That kind of strength is rare because it's built slowly, through discipline and self-control, not emotion. Most relationships are built on convenience, not character. As long as things flow smoothly, as long as there's mutual benefit, the connection feels solid. But the moment circumstances shift, the moment loyalty demands action instead of words, the bond weakens. Not because people suddenly changed, but because the foundation was never strong enough to support weight. This is where disappointment comes from. You expect people to act according to your values, not theirs. You assume that because you would sacrifice, they will too. But that assumption is dangerous. It leads you to overtrust, to overshare, to place emotional weight on people who were never built to carry it. Then when they choose comfort, you call it betrayal, even though they were consistent with who they've always been. True loyalty doesn't announce itself. It doesn't make speeches. It doesn't promise forever. It shows up quietly when things are inconvenient. It stays when leaving would be easier. It protects even when there's nothing to gain. And because that kind of behavior requires strength, discipline, and moral clarity, very few people possess it. Most people live reactively. They respond based on feelings, fear, and short-term relief. Loyalty requires long-term thinking. It requires the ability to endure discomfort now for integrity later. That mindset is uncommon in a world obsessed with immediate gratification. So when pressure hits, comfort wins. Understanding this changes how you move through life. You stop assuming loyalty is owed. You stop confusing kindness with commitment. You stop equating time spent with trust earned. You realize that consistency under pressure is the only real currency of loyalty, and anything else is just noise. This awareness doesn't make you cynical. It makes you precise. You observe how people act when they are stressed, threatened, or inconvenienced. You notice who stays steady and who starts looking for exits. You learn that loyalty is revealed in moments of risk, not moments of ease. When you expect loyalty from everyone, you set yourself up for repeated disappointment. When you recognize how rare it is, you protect yourself without closing your heart. You become selective instead of bitter. You stop demanding loyalty and start recognizing it when it appears. People who choose character over comfort don't advertise it. They don't seek credit. They don't need validation. Their loyalty is quiet, consistent, and rooted in who they are, not what they gain. That's why when you encounter it, it feels different. It feels solid. It feels calm. And once you understand that most people will choose comfort when tested, you stop being shocked by their choices. You stop trying to rescue, convince, or explain. You accept reality as it is, not as you wish it to be. You build your life around principles instead of people's promises. You rely on your own discipline before relying on someone else's loyalty. You keep your expectations grounded and your awareness sharp. Expecting loyalty from people who never showed it turns illusion into self-inflicted pain. Most emotional damage doesn't come from betrayal itself, but from the story you told yourself before it happened. You imagined depth where there was only proximity. You assumed commitment where there was only convenience. And when reality finally showed up, it felt like a wound, even though the warning signs were always there. People reveal themselves early, but most don't want to see it. They listen to words instead of watching behavior. They cling to potential instead of patterns. They excuse inconsistency because it feels kinder than accepting the truth. So they keep raising expectations on people who never agreed to carry that weight. When those expectations collapse, the pain feels personal, but it was built on hope, not evidence. Loyalty is not implied. It's not guaranteed by time, shared memories, or emotional closeness. It has to be demonstrated, and when someone has never demonstrated it, expecting it becomes an act of self-deception. You are asking someone to suddenly act against their nature, their habits, and their priorities, then acting surprised when they don't. This is where illusion becomes dangerous. Illusion feels warm. It feels optimistic. It makes you believe that if you give enough, understand enough, forgive enough, the other person will eventually rise to your level. But people don't change because of your expectations. They change because of their values. And values don't appear under pressure. They are revealed. Self-inflicted pain comes from ignoring what's obvious. When someone only shows up when it's easy, when they disappear during conflict, when they avoid responsibility, when they shift blame, when their loyalty depends on their mood or benefit, those are not accidents, those are patterns, and patterns are promises, whether you like them or not. The mind prefers illusion because illusion preserves hope. Reality demands adjustment. Letting go of false expectations means accepting that some people will never meet you where you stand. That acceptance feels like loss, even if nothing tangible was ever taken. You're not grieving the person, you're grieving the version of them you created. Expectations without evidence are emotional liabilities. They leave you exposed. They drain your energy. They keep you stuck in cycles of disappointment that feel avoidable only in hindsight. But once you recognize this, you regain control. You realize that pain isn't always something that happens to you. Sometimes it's something you participate in by refusing to see clearly. People don't owe you loyalty just because you offered it. That's another illusion. Loyalty is not a transaction. It's a choice. And when someone has consistently chosen themselves over integrity, expecting them to suddenly choose you is unrealistic. It's not harsh. It's honest. This clarity forces you to become more disciplined with trust. You stop giving it based on emotion and start giving it based on consistency. You stop rushing closeness. You stop filling in gaps with assumptions. You let people earn access instead of granting it prematurely. There's a quiet strength in removing expectations, not in a cold, detached way, but in a grounded, aware way. You stop being reactive. You stop being shocked. You stop asking why. You already know why. You saw the behavior. You just didn't want to accept what it meant. When expectations are removed, relationships become clearer. You see people as they are, not as you hope they'll become. You enjoy what's genuine and release what isn't. And when someone leaves, disappoints, or fails to show up, it doesn't destabilize you. It confirms what you already understood. Most emotional freedom comes from this shift, from realizing that you are responsible for where you place your trust, your loyalty, your emotional investment. When you place it carelessly, the pain feels random. When you place it intentionally, the outcome feels manageable. Expecting loyalty from people who never showed it keeps you trapped in fantasy. Letting go of that expectation returns you to reality, and reality, while sometimes uncomfortable, is stable. It doesn't promise what it can't deliver. It doesn't pretend. It doesn't betray. Self-respect and clear boundaries protect you better than any friendship ever will. That idea challenges everything people are taught about connection, belonging, and loyalty. From an early age, you're told that relationships are your safety net, that having people around you means you're supported, that friendship equals protection. But protection doesn't come from how many people know your name. It comes from how well you guard your standards. Self-respect is quiet. It doesn't announce itself or demand recognition. It shows up in what you tolerate and what you refuse. When you have self-respect, you don't beg for understanding. You don't chase reassurance. You don't negotiate your boundaries to keep someone comfortable. You understand that access to you is earned, not owed. Boundaries are not walls. They are filters. They determine who gets close and who stays telling stories from a distance. People who lack boundaries confuse endurance with strength. They think taking more pain makes them loyal. In reality, it makes them available for exploitation. Boundaries are what stop that cycle before it begins. Most people get hurt not because they trusted the wrong person, but because they trusted without limits. They gave unlimited access, unlimited chances, unlimited emotional labor, and then felt shocked when others took advantage of that openness. When you don't define where you end and someone else begins, people will cross lines without hesitation. Friendship is often romanticized as unconditional, but unconditional access is not healthy. Even the strongest relationships require structure. Without it, resentment builds quietly. You start doing things you don't want to do. You say yes when your instincts say no. You silence discomfort to preserve harmony. Over time, that silence becomes betrayal. Self-respect prevents that. It gives you the courage to say no without explaining yourself, to walk away without needing closure, to choose peace over attachment. It teaches you that losing someone who doesn't respect your boundaries is not a loss. It's alignment. People reveal their intentions when you enforce boundaries. Those who respect you will adjust. Those who benefit from your lack of boundaries will resist, guilt, trip, or disappear. That reaction is information. It tells you exactly who valued you and who valued what you provided. Friendships can offer companionship, laughter, shared experiences, but they are not shields. They don't protect your mental health, your values, or your future unless you protect those things first. Without self-respect, even the closest relationship can become a source of harm. Clear boundaries reduce chaos. They remove ambiguity. People know where they stand with you. There's no guessing, no testing, no emotional games. And when someone doesn't like your boundaries, that's not your problem to solve. Discomfort in others is often the price of self-respect. Many people fear boundaries because they fear being alone. But loneliness with self-respect is safer than connection without it. One drains you slowly, the other grounds you. When you rely on friendships to define your worth, you give others control over your emotional state. When you rely on your standards, you stay stable regardless of who comes or goes. Self-respect changes how you respond to disappointment. You don't chase explanations. You don't demand accountability from people who lack it. You don't internalize disrespect. You recognize it and adjust your distance accordingly. That adjustment is not punishment, it's protection. Boundaries also protect others from you. They prevent you from overgiving, overattaching, overinvesting. They keep relationships balanced. When you give from obligation instead of choice, resentment grows. Boundaries ensure that what you give is genuine, not forced. The strongest people are not those surrounded by many friends. They are those who can stand alone without feeling empty. They don't tolerate disrespect for the sake of belonging. They don't shrink to fit into spaces that require self-abandonment. When self-respect leads, friendships become healthier. You no longer expect people to save you. You don't confuse closeness with security. You appreciate loyalty when it appears, but you're not dependent on it for survival. Your stability comes from within. Clear boundaries don't push the right people away. They filter out the wrong ones. And the ones who remain do so because they respect you, not because you made yourself endlessly available. That kind of connection is rare, but it's real. At the core of everything is this understanding: no one will protect your peace more consistently than you. No one will honor your limits better than you. No one will choose your long-term well-being over short-term comfort unless you do first.